Hi, everyone. We are back today on the Drop Point, and today we are joined by Bryan Cordill, and he is the Vice President of Corporate Development at Edge Energy, and he's also a longtime leader in the propane industry. So Bryan's career spans from operations to business development and several years with the Propane Education and Research Council, where he was directly involved in industry training initiatives, including the transition from CTEP to PEP. So today we're talking about workforce development, training evolution, and what propane leaders should be thinking about as the industry moves forward. So before we jump into that conversation, if you haven't already, please go ahead, click the subscribe button so that you can get notified every time we drop a new episode. We've got a great lineup of guest speakers for this year, and each episode is going to be packed with valuable propane industry insight that you are not going to want to miss. So go ahead and subscribe. So with that, let's get started. I think Justin is going to start us off here with some questions. So go ahead, Justin.
Cool. Thanks, Jackie. Hey, Bryan. All right, man. So you've had a long career in the propane industry, right? You started in operations and the sales side. Where'd you first get your start? Like, what kind of pulled you into propane?
Well, a lot of people say it's in their blood, but my grandfather started selling butane in the 1930s. So he was an early driver in the industry, had a small business in North Louisiana, kind of sold that business for the war effort and ended up in steel mills. And long story short, he came back to Louisiana, was a serial entrepreneurist. And when the, Phillips 66 and others started pushing their jobbers to get into the liquid side, in Louisiana, you had to have experience to get a license. So the local jobber hired my grandfather to build their butane business in the 50s. And then in the 60s, he went out on his own and started Cordill Butane Company. That evolved with my father's return. We say return. I don't know why all propane people talk about coming back to the business, but we run like crazy to avoid being in the business, and then we come back because it's all we know and everything we love. So dad was overseas in the oil production side, actually flared more propane every day off the coast of Africa than my grandfather was selling in a year. Anyway, Cordill Butane Propane grew. I avoided the career. I did some insurance work, did some retail sales. But when my dad and my brother took on a Blue Rhino distributorship in the mid to late 90s, provided an opportunity for me to come back to join the family business. So I ran that distributorship for all of Louisiana and about a third of Mississippi, grew it, transitioned it back to Blue Rhino as they were changing their distributor model, and took that opportunity to grow a new retail location, our second location for Cordill Propane there in Monroe, Louisiana. So 20 something years ago, we started that one. About 10 years ago, Dad transitioned to retirement and sold the company. And then I had to get a real job after I failed at retirement. Fortunate enough that Tucker Perkins and Cinch Munson recruited me to come to work at PERC. And so did that, and then here we are today, growing a new propane company with Edge Energy.
How many years were you at PERC?
About 6 years.
What was your role, and what was your focus when you were at PERC?
So I was recruited and joined as the director of residential and commercial business development to kind of explain the PERC ecosystem. That's really an outside-facing role. I mean, we work directly with propane marketers to be sure that we're developing things and opportunities that they want, but it's outside focus, working with manufacturers, working with groups like the National Association of Home Builders, where I served on committees, environmental issues committee, make presentations to those committees and the boards to give the knowledge base that they could work with NAHB leadership and NPGA leadership for things like the energy choice legislation that's pending now. If you look at anything that the home builders have said in the last few years, MPGA's language it's almost like it was laid in there. And that's because they were given an education on the builders want to reduce the cost of home ownership. They want to increase their ability to sell houses. At the same time, there is a concern about increasing carbon emissions. We were able to communicate with them that just because you electrify something doesn't mean you're reducing carbon. As they understood that better knowledge of where that carbon is being consumed. Maybe it's not at the home. Maybe it's upstream at the power plant. Maybe we're producing 3 times as much carbon emissions as we were if we just used a high performance product in the home. And so from there, we were trying to develop those high performance products. So whether it was micro CHP, combined heat and power products, the hydronic heating solutions where we're pairing electric heat pump technology that is extremely efficient until it's not. And then when it's not, pairing that with something that's extremely efficient, like a propane condensing tankless boiler or water heater that's running 98% efficiency, or even pairing it with a propane heat pump that's running at 140% efficiency to deliver the hot water that we can then blow air across and heat our home or distribute through in-floor heating, radiant, any of that. So we started as residential commercial, grew the commercial side to the point that it needed its own director, and PERC added the position, and they've had a couple of great guys in that commercial role, and then I refocused on the residential track at that point.
Cool. Yeah, quite the experience there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I got to see some. I mean, there's some stuff that once the timeline of the NDA runs out, and we can talk about the products that we saw that we haven't come to market yet, just because the economic driver's not there. But there's some technology out there that marketers can feel confident that there's a pipeline of equipment that will keep them being able to set tanks at residences and do what we do, going from the big tank to the little tank.
Well, very cool. So you've seen a lot. So as far as industry change, like from your perspective, what do you think's been like the biggest change in the industry over the last decade?
I think we just have to say technology, just because there's so many that touches so many things, whether it be, I think we look at the difference in tank monitors 10 years ago when we sold our company, and we were using a few as what we call bell cows, when you got the real variable user or on a route, the person that's got the most likelihood to need a delivery first. And, we put a few out there because they were so expensive, and the sale plans, all that operating, to the point now we can look at the return on investment of monitoring almost all of our retail customers, for sure all of our auto route customers, and with the cost of trucks, with the cost of human resources, the ability to deliver to that customer and to that route at a density and lowering miles per delivery, increasing gallons per mile, whichever way you want to look at that, just vehicle and driver efficiencies. That's a huge improvement in the last 10 years. And the manufacturers continue to make improvements annually on what that does and how that works. But we got to use that technology smartly. The AI part of technology, when, we can have an AI tool review our metrics daily and give us a report in minutes rather than in the hours that we might have analysts spending time, so that we have real-time data and we know what our performance was. Those things are designed to make us work smarter, but we didn't have to do that. We've got to still use the human noodle to review that data and make appropriate responses to that.
Yeah, and you're right, though. Those monitors, that was kind of a game changer. Took that guesswork out of those hard to predict heating degree day
Yeah,
customer or
in retooling our StarTex business, we were able to eliminate, through attrition and retirement and things, we dropped 3 frontline bobtail operations to deliver the same number of gallons.
yeah, I can believe that. So what's one thing about propane that hasn't changed other than the chemical makeup, I guess?
I mean, the people. I mean, that's what's been so great about that. Working for PERC. I mean, I was a small marketer. I mean, many people know my dad was a chairman of NPGA. He probably represented the smallest retail company to ever have their owner represent NPGA at the highest level. Took him to Congress and Senate hearings and did a lot of things for the industry. So I've been fortunate enough to know a lot of the leaders and the historical drivers of the industry. But that hasn't changed. Now that I'm really out on the road back with marketers, even more so than I was at PERC, just the commonality of the stories, the ability to relate to, this week I was talking to a person who her first memories of the propane industry were sitting in her grandmother's lap running manual tickets. I can tell you, I ran statements on a hand cranked mimeograph machine off of register card. We have this commonality of seeing the industry progress from you call, we haul to the customer service and customer experience driven business that we have today.
Yeah, you're kind of dating yourself with that ticket machine.
The statute of limitations is expired. So I can tell you my first job in the propane world was as a bartender at a state association convention as an underaged server. But I progressed quickly to a cylinder filling specialist. Again, OSHA's those limits have expired too, but probably as a single digit 8 or 9-year-old.
That's awesome. So how about the CTEP to PEP transition? Like, the training or the transition CTEP to PEP, it's been a major shift, but what prompted the change?
So yeah, I wasn't directly involved in the change. I was listened at a high level, but I think that the simple response is continued improvement. CTEP was a great step when it was created by the industry, and that was a joint MPGA PERC activity, and then PERC purchased CTEP and got full control of it. But just continual improvement. The council invested a lot of money in a great staff on the safety and training team, a lot of expertise in adult learning and in training individuals to not just learn information, but to be able to learn and then apply it to their role and their job function. And I think when you look at CTEP, 8 hours, 12 hours over 2 days, some redundancies when you went from basic to bobtail to you've got a green bobtail driver that's learning how to unload a rail car because that was covered in the course, and their company didn't even have rail cars. So with PEP, the focused attention to the right information at the right time for that employee to do their new job or their next job the best they can and the safest they can is the benefit of blowing up the CTEP program into modules so that they can then be defined by a state or an individual company as to what the person needs at that time for their job function.
So how about operators in the field, though? What's the biggest practical difference between CTEP and PEP?
So the benefit of flexibility is you get to choose what you have them learn now. The challenge is you have to make that decision where we just put everybody in basic practices. They got the whole classwork. So the challenge is the marketer has to own it. They need to have an administrator or a dedicated person that is assigning the skill sets and the paths to their employees. The beauty is, and we're trying to take advantage of it, is as a company administrator, you can go in and select the modules that you want to be assigned to all of your employees or some of your employees, all your drivers, all your service techs, all your CSRs. We can sprinkle in the non-safety training with the other sales and marketing training that is in the learning center and give this cultured path to lead our employees in the safety training that we want to experience. The other challenge for the local marketer is states have language that says to get a license, you needed to complete CTEP. So they've got that amended to say CTEP or its equivalent. But as modules change, who's deciding what is that equivalent? So state association leaders working with their state regulators to define what does meet that minimum standard for licensure and just making sure that that's communicated. I know PERC has worked with multiple states and there are state specific learning paths that you can assign to your employees so that you complete these, you get your transcript, submit that to the state agency and say, we qualified we've done our training requirement. We would like to take the exam or whatever your state requires for licensure. So that's a big benefit, but it's also an intentional action that the marketer, the state, and the regulatory body have to take to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
All right. Thanks, Bryan. I think Jackie's got a few more questions here. Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about the workforce development part of it. So Bryan, with your background in industrial and organizational psychology, how do you see training and workforce development shaping the future of propane?
Yeah, I think I start with a shout out to PERC and their technical school grant program. So there is a curriculum that is approved or developed and approved for use in high school, community college, technical college curriculums to cover the basics of propane systems, how it functions in HVAC and plumbing, and how it's like natural gas but different. Just really give the at the high school in one course level, it's an introductory level, but there's a more in-depth course, and then we have, of course, the full-blown courses that CPTEC and PPTEC and others are offering. Marketers should be looking at in their marketplace. There are technical and community colleges across this country that have not participated. They need a marketer sponsor. So if you're sitting in your market going, gosh, I wish I could find some young person that wants to work with their hands and I could get them introduced to propane. Well, here's a tool to go to that community college or technical college and say, fill out this grant application and I'll walk through it. PERC will pay your instructor to go and be trained to deliver this curriculum and then put it in the field. And marketers should be lining up to interview those graduates when they finish that course. Um, you ask about my background in industrial psychology. I have said for many years, and I'm not an active practitioner, but use the tools through our company. Every kid is college material. We need to change the mindset because a lot of kids are told you're not college material. What people mean is you don't need to go to a 4-year university and get a background in psychology and philosophy and management and things. You need to go to college, whether that be community, technical, or local. You need to go to college and get the experience you need to function in a career. I mean, I know $80,000 a year jobs that are being filled by people that are 1 and 2 years out of an 18-month program. I mean, there's just a ton of opportunity. MPGA and insurance companies have worked to get CDL drivers with hazmats covered at a younger age. So these kids that are coming out at 20, 19 or 20 can go to work on a service truck, can be licensed and insured to pull a trailer with a tank on it and do that work. And we just have to continually look at ways to evolve that concept. Every kid is college material. We have the resources to put in front of them and get them going and trained to work in our industry. I think we see every day in our new world, and we're working with marketers across the country, you get somebody in 4 or 5 years and they're a lifer at that point. They're going to be in the propane industry at some role, whether it's on the technical install side for the company, whether it's moving into management or it's moving to a distributor and being a field installation expert or a salesperson. There's just so many opportunities. When we look at career development and going from a smaller company to a larger company, and I know at Edge we're building a bigger company, but when I can have a seller look at me and say, I'm so happy that my daughter has a better chance to develop her skills working for your organization than she would have just working under me and doing the same things that I had done, just rinse, wash, repeat. That he believes giving her a chance to stay in the industry in a larger ecosystem with greater opportunities is his gift to her.
That's really neat. That's some good insight there. All right, next question. Looking ahead, what do you see as the future of the propane industry, especially when it comes to workforce development and business growth?
So I think the future of the industry, there's been lots of studies on the consolidation of the propane industry from independents to mid-majors to mid-majors to majors. And whatever circle of time we look at, there seems to always be that entrepreneurial person who has had their career developed working for one of these other companies and takes the opportunity to start an independent propane company where there's a void because an entity or a group lost some focus on the customer or the customer perceived a lack of focus. So this individual goes in and starts a propane company. And the ones that did that in the 70s and the 80s are retiring at this point. The ones that did it in the 80s and 90s are looking to try to figure out where their next generation is or how they go. So that cyclical growth of the marketer count, I think the number of marketers basically has stayed flat. Just the names have changed. The companies have changed. Who the largest companies are has cycled through, and whether it be Heritage going to AmeriGas, I mean, you know all the players that have cycled. We still have, I still see one truck operations delivering 250 to 500,000 gallons a year out of their carport because they're taking care of customers and they're feeding their family that way. So I think as we look at growing the industry and that workforce development, we need to bridge the gap so that there are those training opportunities are approved, so those smaller companies can grow a little bit, and when they hit the growing pains and can't figure out how to manage it, and they look to someone like us to take that opportunity to purchase it and grow it again, they know that they've got something other than just the owner's goodwill to sell. They have a trained staff, they have a customer base that is consistent with propane, and that this staff has that future to grow. And then I don't think the cycle breaks. I think the challenge today might be for that entrepreneurial spirit to get the capital to get started, just with the cost of a truck, a load of tanks. I mean, my grandfather got in the business for himself for less than $10,000. I mean, you can't get a couple 1,000-gallon tanks for $10,000 today. So I mean, that's a barrier to entry, but I mean, there's lots of grandfathers still out there that if their grandson said, "Hey, I fell in love with this business that you got me into. Can you help seed me?" That there's still people out there able to start those smaller independents, grow them, and I think that cycle's just going to continue.
What do you think? But what's something that sets Edge apart from other companies?
So as an investor driven company, and it's not just outside investors, it's investors that understand and have been in the propane industry for quite a while. I think that what sets us apart is our focus on preserving legacy, maintaining the culture of the company that had. We evaluate every opportunity, every acquisition. We're not looking to change their business to match ours. We're looking to blend businesses and cultures for the greater good. We pick up something that every marketer was doing a little better than we were and incorporate that into our global culture and staff each step of the way. So we are not perfect marketers. I spent 6 years at PERC telling people this is how you should run a propane company, and now I'm out here trying to prove that I was right. But I think the fit of industry experience, the honesty with which we approach acquisition opportunities, and I mean, it's not secret sauce. Everybody knows I sold a propane company, but I have a relationship with that seller that not a lot of guys do because of that experience. I can 100% relate to the fear and concern that they have, and completely open and honest with them when they ask me, how do I deal with this? I was fortunate. My grandfather raised me to never be emotionally attached to an asset. I had to manage my father because he was emotionally attached to his father's business. He was an only child. My brother and I were just trying to figure out where we were going to land once it was done. So I think just the relationships within the industry and our focus on growing the strongest customer focused propane company that we can while honoring those legacies. I will tell you, and I tell everyone else this: I am building a company that would make my grandfather proud.
Bryan, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think that maybe we need to discuss, or anything you wanted to kind of add?
I mean, I think we built most of it in there. I mean, I'm fortunate that the propane industry has given me, like, we talk about a long career. Yeah, lots of years, and I can date myself with a lot of the stories. I mean, I knew the people that I knew that were our salesmen when I was a kid have retired. But it's also, the leadership of most of our distributors were once my sales team, uh, and those relationships in this industry. I go back to the people in the industry, just really a great group of folks to continue to work with, and I'm thrilled that I get a chance to do that every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I keep hearing in every interview about the people of this industry and how they have just stayed the same, and how it's just such a community type of feel within this industry, and that's so cool to hear. It makes me wish that I was in that I was kind of, like, well, maybe I should go get a job in propane. Okay, so the last question we've got for you today, Bryan, is what's one thing that you wish that more propane leaders understood about training and long-term development?
So I think a lot of marketers think if they're just doing the same thing, if they're not changing, then they're staying current. But that's not the case. The industry's moving forward. So if you're not changing and adapting, you're actually moving backwards. So taking the opportunity to look at, I know I sound like a PERC commercial, but I mean, look at everyday safe. Look at the opportunities that the industry is providing to you. Your customers are paying a part of a penny of every gallon they buy to fund or to provide resources for the industry. And if you're not taking advantage of it, you're wasting your customers' money. So look at Everyday Safe, look at the courses we talked about, the Learning Center, and again, open up to not just the minimum requirement. Look at the opportunity to provide education, encouragement, development for your employees. Yes, employees gonna be, oh, I got to do that. Anything other than waiting for the next call is going to be a challenge, but they will appreciate when they complete the time and the energy that you've invested in them. You desire to see them come home every night. You deserve to invest in them so that they do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all we had for you today. Justin, is there anything else you can think of that you would like to talk about with Bryan before we sign off?
I think we covered it.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoy watching as much as we enjoyed putting this together for you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all of our episodes. And we will see you next time.